Hey y'all, it's Kimberly from the Path Illuminated. Hope you're doing well. I just posted my first reading of 2025 yesterday. It's been a minute. My goal is to be here a bit more consistently this year. And if you saw my video yesterday, you'll see that I personally felt called to focus more on collective readings as we are in this new Age of Aquarius, with Pluto having gone into Aquarius last November. We are in Aquarius season. As I am pulling these cards, and just for reference, the new moon in Aquarius is coming up on the 29th. However, this message will find you when it is meant to find you, and there will be something here for you. So let's get going. Thank you, angels, spirits, ancestors, and guides. Oh, it's a lot of cards all at once. Let's see. Interesting. Okay. So, speaking of the moon has entered the chat. We have the moon. So in astrology, the moon is associated with Cancer. A lot of times in tarot, it is associated with Pisces. Regardless, you know, this is all about the unknown. This is about finding a light in the darkness and really dealing with and managing the discomfort of being in a space, being in a time of not exactly knowing what exactly is going on. And I think this is definitely 100% relevant for the energies, the circumstances, the events that have been taking place since this new year started, right? There's been a lot of chaos, a lot of confusion, a lot of concerning things that have happened. And I think there are more of us than not that are starting to realize that everything has fundamentally changed in our reality, and it's never going to be the way that it was. And maybe it was never really that way, but there was a lot of strong programs that made us feel as if there was a certain way that the world worked. There was a certain way that things were, and things were going to continue to be that way. And I think if you are a spiritual person, you're tapping into this energy of like, everything has changed. And maybe you're not even quite exactly sure what that is, but it can be unnerving. It has been. It's been triggering. But the moon card is also an energy of reminding you that control is an illusion. And just because things in our reality have been maybe a certain way for 20, 30, 40 years, it's perhaps given us sort of this idea that that was stable. And I'm really, you know, as I brought up the Pluto and Aquarius, you know, Pluto's going to be in Aquarius for the next 19 years. And Pluto had been in Capricorn for like the last, was it 15 years? Since 2008, when the original financial crisis started. And things have been going a certain way for so long, and we've all, to a certain degree, gotten used to it being that way. You know, the way that the world works, the way that work works, the things that we're expected to do, the things that we agree to do, the ways that we live our life. And this moon energy to me is all about tapping into a deeper knowing. And you see right there are these two wolves here. And that's about finding the balance between your wild self and your civilized self, right? Because the moon card often talks about, you know, the taming of the canine versus the wild nature of the canine. And we have both within us. It is typically, you know, our natural instincts, our natural intuition, our inner knowing that we have been taught to dismiss and uh, diminish, because, you know, we live in this modern society. And I've said it before, you know, that at this time we are the most disconnected from nature than we ever have been. And because of that disconnection, we have in many ways forgotten who we are and the power and the knowing and the remembrance that is within. And so I really am feeling like this card is calling all of us that are here, that are resonating with this, to remember who we are and to remember that innate, natural, raw, untapped potential that is within us that we have maybe set aside to be a part of society. But society as we know it is shifting, is changing, is collapsing in many, many ways. And we need to get back to basics. And in some ways that can be really scary because, like, what does that mean? And again, the moon is all about the unknown. And this is really a time of, you know, leaning into faith and walking by faith and allowing the universe to guide us one step at a time. Again, letting go of this illusion of control. If you're waiting to know it all before you make a move, you're probably going to be stuck for a while. So this is learning to hear that, tap into and listen to that inner voice. Listen to the guidance of your ancestors, of God, of your angels, of, you know, your guides. Learning how to move in a different way. Remembering, you know, the way of our ancestors is what I'm hearing right now. Because we have Page of Swords in reverse. I'll show it to you upright. But it came reversed. So with the Page of Swords reverse, it's like, it's not going to be very easy right now to know what to do. There are going to be a lot of different options, a lot of different paths, a lot of inundation of information, a lot of overstimulation because we are getting so much information on a regular basis. And it's like, it's nonstop, right? Like, think about, you know, since January 1st, how much has happened, how much has changed, and how much information just you as an individual you've taken in, and how overwhelming that is. And you're like, you know, which way is up, which way is down? What do I do? Right? So that's why this moon energy at this time, tapping into this faith, tapping into your spiritual practices, right? To ground yourself and to, you know, not get ahead, don't get ahead of yourself, right? Like, there's obviously like a lot of fear that gets triggered in us when there are a lot of unknowns, and there are a lot of unknowns right now. And it can be difficult to know, how do I move forward? How do I operate in this new reality? Like, I'm understanding that and acknowledging that everything has changed, but I don't really know what to do. I'm overthinking a lot. I'm in my head. I'm worried. I have anxiety. I have fear. I'm worried about doing the wrong thing. And like, I completely identify with that. Like, my overthinking has been really, really intense just because of how much information I'm taking in, right? Like, I want to understand the world around me. I want to make smart moves. I want to move wisely, right? And with intention. But sometimes, like, I don't know what to do. And, you know, sometimes it's about just acknowledging that, right? And reaching out to, you know, our ancestors, our guides, tapping into that, those spiritual practices, like I mentioned before, and asking for guidance. Like, what is the next step, right? Like, accept the fact that, like, there's no way to know exactly what's going to happen, how it's going to happen, when it's going to happen. But you can ask, you know, God, the angels, your ancestors, your guides, like, what is the next step I can take, right? And the next card after that is the Five of Cups. And like, for me, this is when you ask God, the universe, your ancestors, your guides, what's next? Like, what do I do? Accept that everything is changing. Accept that nothing is ever going to be the same again. Accept that there are some things that maybe you've held dearly that are not going to be things that you can depend on, and this could be very emotional for you. This could bring up a lot in your emotional body, and like I said, it's triggering. And it's not just the overthinking, it's like your emotions get involved obviously too, because you start to get worried, you start to be fearful. You're like, how am I going to pay my bills? How am I going to, like all of the things that are changing right now. And you're like, I'm getting this sense of like, it's not even like things were so perfect, right? Things have never been perfect. And we've been asking for change individually and collectively. But then when it shows up, especially the way it's been showing up lately, it can like almost trick us into that place of nostalgia where we convince ourselves that the past was better than it actually was. If the past was so good, ask yourself this question. Why have we been asking for, begging for, and manifesting change? Why? And I say that with a lot of compassion because I'm right here with y'all. I have been asking for this change, but now that it's shown up, I'm like, what is going on? What do we do? How do we deal with this change? How do we deal with these triggers? How do we deal with these fears? How do we deal with this emotional roller coaster? Because change is triggering. We have to acknowledge that, right? And then, of course, Five of Swords, right? I'm sorry for the background noise, y'all. I live in a big city, so it is what it is. Five of Cups and Five of Swords. So it's like our thoughts and our feelings are super, super triggered right now because so much is changing every moment, every second, every day. The overthinking is in overdrive. And again, I think it's so important to acknowledge that, like finding a place, finding people that you can feel safe with to have these conversations, because kind of like I alluded to yesterday in my other reading, it's very triggering when you try to talk to people in your world, in your reality, in your everyday life, and they're just acting like everything is normal when it's not. So I hope you have at least one person that you can have a conversation about, like, whoa, like, my overthinking is triggered, my emotions are triggered. Sometimes I feel so overwhelmed, it's hard to even get out of bed some days, just because of what I'm seeing and what I'm feeling and what is happening in the collective, and what I'm having to deal with on a regular basis. It's nothing to be ashamed of, right? Like, these are very human reactions to things that are happening, and it's normal for us to feel this way. And then we have the King of Cups reversed. Not surprised. Again, the emotions are very triggered and very, very overwhelming right now. And it's hard to feel grounded. It's hard to feel like we have a real grasp on what's going on or even what to do about it. So for me, like, this is telling me that we need to acknowledge where we are. It's important to acknowledge that, like, we individually and collectively have been asking for these big, huge, astronomical societal changes. But when those changes happen, it turns our insides upside down because change is so triggering. And I think that it's asking for us to go deeper and to take accountability and to ask, how can we ground ourselves in this moment? How can we turn this, King of Cups energy upright and find emotional grounding in ourselves and in the communities and groups that we are a part of? I'm going to grab another deck here to go a little bit deeper. Thanks for being here, y'all. If the messages resonate, don't forget to like and subscribe. Let me know how this energy is showing up for you. How are you managing the start of this year? Because it's definitely been very, very intense. It's hard to even keep track of how much is changing in real time, just like in dealing also with our regular everyday responsibilities, which sometimes can feel, you know, unnerving. That's not surprising. The first card I got from this deck was the 10 of Coins, but it's reversed. Feeling like very unstable. I would say that the financial markets are unpredictable at this time. And I think that it's important to acknowledge that some of this feeling of instability does come from the mind. When change happens, it triggers a lot of fears in us, right? And so perhaps you are dealing with some financial setbacks, but also maybe this is just about fears about financial setbacks. And remember that there are things you can do. You can't control everything, but maybe, you know, in order to deal with some of this emotional instability, to really think about, how am I spending my money, and are there changes that I can make to help me feel more secure, right? Like, are there things that I can cut off? Are there places I can save money? Are there things that I can stop spending my money on so that I can make sure I have, you know, something stashed away for a rainy day? Because you're feeling the fluctuation of, you know, the world around us in the financial markets, and it's going to continue to be fluctuating. There's going to continue to be disturbances because this entire system, this entire timeline is collapsing. The things that we have come to depend on, whether we like it or not, they are not going to be what we thought they were. They're not going to continue to go up and to the right. As we say in business, you know, like, nothing lasts forever. But finding ways that we can secure ourselves, and, you know, like, here's an example, personal example for you. I just ordered a little microgreens growing kit off of the TikTok shop, because I want to start growing some microgreens. I've never been into gardening, but I'm pretty good with plants, and I know how nutritious microgreens are, and I'm like, okay, this is a way that I can kind of fortify myself in a sustainable way, like kind of expand my skills, and I can use microgreens for like a salad, and that's a good way to save money. That's a good way to expand my skills. Okay, next card. Judgment. There's no way that we can avoid what's coming. We've seen it. We continue to see it. The changes are positive. The changes are destructive. It's very challenging to see things being destroyed, see people suffering. But the reason these things are being revealed to us is so we can clearly see what needs to change. Do you know what I mean? Like, nothing can change unless we first identify it, unless we see it. But in the revelation of these things that need to change, it's very difficult. It's very heartbreaking. But these people and situations are being exposed as a means for us as a collective to tap into that unity consciousness of like, oh, this is wrong. This is not okay. This needs to stop. This needs to change. right? The things that are being revealed to us are being revealed so that we can see it as a collective. That, oh, this is not new. This is just finally being revealed to us. And now we as a collective are able to judge it as like, we don't want this anymore. We don't want this in our reality. We want change. And, you know, there are people down here praying. And again, for me, this is like about fortifying your spiritual practice, whatever that happens to be, like being grounded in your own, in yourself, and in the things that are going to help you during this time of great change, are going to help you to have the capacity to be with what is happening. You know, I always talk about the fact that I'm not about spiritual bypassing or toxic positivity. There are a lot of spiritual practitioners who, you know, take spiritual teachings and their way of seeing it is unbalanced, right? Like, I believe if you have a grounded spiritual practice, it will help you to find the capacity to be with not just the good things of this reality, but also the difficulties, the heartbreak, the suffering, right? Our spiritual practices should fortify us enough that we're able to find the time and the space to be with what's happening that we're not okay with. We have to allow our hearts to break for humanity, to break for what's happening, in order for us to find the strength, gather the strength to be a part of the change in whatever way that is, right? Like, all of us have a part in this, whatever that is. Okay, let's get a few more. Don't forget to like and subscribe if this message is resonating for you. Reading those spirits and guides. I think this card came out yesterday too. Interesting. Let's get one more, and then it'll be how we. Oh, interesting. Okay. Two of Wands in reverse. Now is the time to take a breath. Now is the time to take your time with how you're moving. This card came out yesterday, and this is a reiteration and a reconfirmation. Sit with your emotions. Let your emotions tell you, right? Express to you what it needs to, but do not be controlled by your emotions, and don't allow it to push you to make rash decisions at this time. This is the time to take a breath and to know when to go and when to hold back. And I do think that right now is a time of observation and trusting that when it's time to make a move, you're going to know. And then we have the Ace of Wands also in reverse. Now, again, is a time to fortify ourselves. Not necessarily to take big moves or big actions forward, but to gather ourselves, gather in our own spiritual practices. I think this is also about, you know, fortifying relationships and community, right? That oftentimes we think of taking action as this big, bold thing. And I think that with the Two of Wands and the Ace of Wands in reverse, which obviously is Three of Wands, which is like, the Three of Wands is about your ships coming in. I think this is about knowing when to hold back. Knowing that just because maybe right now you're unclear of what to do, that's okay. That's okay. Like, if you have a moment to take a breath, if you have a moment to invest in your spiritual practices, if you have this moment to get your spiritual routine in order, that's going to help you for when it is time to take action, when it is time to move forward, when it is time to push ahead, right? But this is like really a time to, I know I've been struggling with this for sure on a personal level, that I'm like, I feel anxious, I want to do something, I don't know what to do. And something that I've kind of a mantra that I've been saying to myself over the last year is, it's okay if I don't know what to do right now. I trust that when it's time for me to do something, to make a decision, to take an action, I'm going to know that it's time and I'm going to be ready to make that decision. So I think that this is about preparing ourselves and investing in our spiritual practices and deepening our faith in ourselves, in spirit, in our guides, in community, so that we're prepared for these changes, because it's not going to be easy as we move into this next phase of this new timeline. And then we do have the Five of Coins, but it's reversed. So again, you know, we had the 10 of Coins reversed, and this for me is like, again, about doing what you can with what you have to fortify yourself and to ensure that you have your needs met, right? Thinking beyond, if you have a 9 to 5 job, finding other ways to make money, and understanding that security and abundance is about much more than a paycheck, right? Like I was saying, that I'm going to start growing microgreens, right? And trying to find different ways to save money, and talking to different people about bartering, right? Like meeting people in your community, right? Maybe about starting a community garden, like finding different ways to fortify ourselves in the way of bringing in and solidifying abundance that is about much more than money, even though obviously the system that we've been in is very, you know, built upon money as the means for abundance. So this is about shifting our perspective, shifting our values, and starting to operate in a new way. And then bottom of the deck is Death in reverse. So for me, this is a reminder to not let fear control us, to control our actions, to control our perception. Nothing lasts forever. Things have needed to change for a very long time. This has not been an equitable system or world for many, many decades, maybe hundreds of years even. It's understandable that we are triggered when things end, when things die, even if we've been asking for that change. But it's time. You see this little hourglass? It's time for certain things to end, because in order for us to begin again, we have to demolish the old structures that were no longer working, and understand that change is working in our favor. But first we have to go through the destruction and the collapse, and that's very difficult. And we're gonna be triggered. But this is, and then under that, it's also the Five of Cups, which came up earlier, which I think is funny. It's like, see things for what it is. Understand that change is inevitable, and this is something we've all manifested individually and collectively. And let's find the means to fortify ourselves, our spiritual practices, our, you know, connections, our communities, the way that we you know, take care of ourselves. There are other ways, and we need to change as the world is changing around us. And is that easy? Absolutely not. But the universe is asking us to have faith, to hold on to hope, and to ask for guidance on those small daily things that we can do to sustain ourselves, to fortify ourselves, to ground ourselves, so that we can deal with the change that's coming. I think that's the message, y'all. Hold tight to the ones you love. Invest in your spiritual practices. Again, stay hydrated, get rest, move your body, eat good food if you can, find other ways to sustain yourself, open your mind, and focus on one day at a time, right? Because that's all that exists right now. Your mind is going to want to go into spirals of like, what about this, that, and the other thing? And it's understandable, right? The ego wants to keep us safe, but we'll get super triggered and overwhelmed by trying to figure out every little detail that we can't, because control is an illusion. We can work on controlling our perception. We can work on controlling how we respond, being responsive versus reactive, like I said, taking our time, knowing that maybe right now is not the time to take bold action, but there are small things we can do, right, to fortify ourselves and to keep ourselves, our families, our communities safe. So again, one day at a time, y'all. Hope to see you soon. Thanks for being here. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you later.